Mom, Dad left everything to me. You knew that, right? Vanessa's voice was soft, even sweet, like the way she used to ask for bedtime stories, but there was no innocence left in it now, just calculation. I am Marcia Langston. I was married to Floyd Langston for 30 years, and this is the story of how, 3 days after I buried my husband, my own daughter took everything I had and laughed while she did it. The funeral had just ended. The last guest was still lingering near the door, whispering condolences, when Vanessa stepped in front of me as if she had been waiting for her moment. Her black dress was perfectly pressed, her makeup flawless, not a tear out of place. I remember staring at her, convinced I had misheard. "What did you say?" I asked. She sighed, not impatiently worse, politely. I said Dad left everything to me. The lawyer stood beside her, holding a slim folder like it weighed nothing. I felt the room tilt. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." My hands began to shake. I reached for Vanessa's arm, gripping it the way a mother does when she's trying to steady herself through her child. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking, "this isn't funny. Your father wouldn't." She yanked her arm away so hard that I stumbled backward. My heel caught on the edge of the rug. I went down, awkwardly, humiliatingly, landing on my hip in front of the lawyer, the flowers, the framed photo of Floyd smiling from the memorial table. Vanessa laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable one. A sharp, amused laugh. "Oh my God, Mom," she said. "You're really doing this?" She crouched down just enough to meet my eyes and shoved the folder toward me. "Here, read it yourself." The will. I opened it with trembling fingers. My name appeared only once. Beneficiary. Insurance. $200,000. That was it. Everything else, our home, the company Floyd and I built together, the savings Vanessa Langston. I felt something tear inside my chest. "Vanessa," I said, my voice barely audible. "I gave up everything for this family. For you." She stood, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. "You gave up what you chose to give up." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Langston, the documents are valid. Your husband revised them shortly before his death." I looked up at him. "Did you talk to him about me?" His eyes slid away. That was when I knew. Vanessa stepped closer again, lowering her voice. "Look, I don't want a scene, but the house is legally mine now. I'll give you 30 days to pack your things." "Pack?" I repeated. She reached into her purse, pulled out a thick envelope, and tossed it at my chest. It hit me and slid down into my lap. "Cash." I stared at it, stunned. "There," she said. "That should cover a hotel or something until you figure things out." The shame burned hotter than the grief. People were still nearby. The lawyer pretended not to notice. I felt small, disposable. And then, like a cruel joke, a memory flooded my mind. Vanessa at 17. The night of the accident, the twisted metal, the blood everywhere. The doctor telling me she needed an emergency transfusion, same blood type, rare. "No hesitation," I'd said. "Take mine." I breathing long phrase. I remembered lying in that hospital bed, dizzy, my arm bruised, watching her sleep in the next room, tubes everywhere. I remembered thinking I would gladly give my life if it meant she would live. And now she was standing in front of me, throwing money at my face to make me disappear. If you feel Marcia's pain, please like this video and comment where you're watching from, because someone near you might be watching this story with you right now. "You wouldn't even be standing here," I said, my voice shaking. "If I hadn't—" She rolled her eyes. "Please, don't start with the martyr routine." "Martyr." I bent slowly and picked up the envelope. My hands were steady now, too steady. "Your father promised me I would be protected," I said quietly. Vanessa smiled, thin and sharp. "He protected the legacy." Then she turned away. I stayed on the floor long after she left, long after the lawyer followed her out, long after the room emptied and the silence pressed in. That night, I didn't cry. I sat alone and replayed every conversation Floyd and I had in the months before his death, every look, every pause, every moment when he seemed like he wanted to say something but didn't. Floyd was not careless, he was not cruel, and he was not stupid. If this will existed, then something else did too. Vanessa thought she had erased me. She was wrong. She had taken my home. She had taken my security. She had taken my dignity, but she had not taken my memory, and she had not taken the truth. That truth was waiting quiet, patient, deliberate, and I was going to find it. The envelope stayed on my kitchen table for 2 days. I didn't open it again. I didn't touch the cash inside. I just let it sit there, thick and smug, like a final insult I couldn't sweep away. Every time I passed by, it stared at me, a silent reminder that my daughter no longer saw me as her mother, but as an obstacle to manage. The house was too quiet. It had always been quiet since Floyd's passing, but now it felt hollow, violated. I walked through each room like a stranger, seeing shadows of myself in the old curtains, the faded rugs, the framed photos that now felt staged. We had built this home together, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. And now it belonged to someone who had never lifted a hammer, never scrubbed the grout, never cried over an unpaid mortgage bill. Vanessa hadn't even waited. The next morning, I found a voicemail from a man who introduced himself as the property manager for the Langston estate. He said, in a voice too cheerful for the context, that he was available to assist with the transition and offered to coordinate moving support at my convenience. Transition, moving support. I had been demoted from wife to tenant, from mother to problem. I didn't call him back. Instead, I went into the attic. Floyd had kept all our paperwork in a large cedar trunk, the one he joked would outlive us both. It still smelled like dust and old receipts. I found tax returns from the 90s, letters from past clients, blueprints from his first failed company. But the will, the original one, wasn't there. I sat back on my heels, hands smudged with ink and age, and closed my eyes. Floyd had promised me he would revise the will. He said it softly, one night after dinner, while Vanessa was away at a tech conference. "Don't worry, Marcy," he murmured, brushing my hand with his. "You'll be protected. Always." He had held my gaze, and I had believed him. Because back then, I still trusted that love meant something. So why had he changed it? I went downstairs, poured myself a cup of black coffee I didn't want, and sat at the table across from the envelope again. There was something missing. Something that didn't add up. Vanessa was smart, but she was never subtle. If she had taken control of the estate, she would have done it boldly, directly. That folder at the funeral hadn't been a reaction. It had been a presentation. She was waiting for that moment, ready for it. But Floyd never would have excluded me, not unless he didn't know. Unless someone else had helped her. The thought curdled in my stomach. I picked up the envelope not to open it, but to throw it in the drawer. As I did, a slip of paper slid out, tucked beneath the last bill. It was a receipt. From Morrison and Vale Law, dated 2 months before Floyd's death. Initial consultation. Name, Vanessa Langston. I froze. Why would Vanessa meet with our lawyer before Floyd died? And why would Morrison allow it without telling me? I felt the old anger surge again. Not loud, but deep. Steady. I pulled out my phone and called Morrison's office. The receptionist answered on the 3rd ring. "Langston Estate," she said brightly. "How may I assist you?" "This is Marcia Langston. I need to speak with Mr. Morrison." There was a pause. "He's currently out of the office for the remainder of the week. Then I need to schedule an appointment." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but his calendar is full until the end of next month." "Next month?" "I'm his client," I said, voice tightening. "He's handled my family's affairs for over 20 years. This can't wait." Another pause. "I can send a message, but I can't promise he'll be available." "Fine," I snapped. "Send it." I hung up and sat there, heart pounding, trying to decide if I was being paranoid or finally seeing things clearly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room because I could no longer stand the bed I'd shared with Floyd and stared at the ceiling. I thought about the night Vanessa broke her arm falling off the jungle gym, the night she got lost at the state fair, the night she came home sobbing after her first heartbreak. I thought of every moment I had held her, protected her, defended her. I thought of the hospital again, the blood transfusion, the doctor's grim face, my own fear. I had never hesitated. Not once. She wouldn't be alive without me. And now, she was trying to erase me. In the early hours, I remembered something small, but sudden and sharp. A few weeks before Floyd passed, he had received a letter, registered mail. He hadn't told me what it was, only that it was important. He had put it in his desk drawer. I went to that drawer now, trembling as I opened it. The letter was gone, but taped to the back of the drawer, hidden where no one would casually see it, was a business card. James R. Mitchell, Esquire. Private Estates. Independent Counsel. Not Morrison. I stared at the card for a long time. Floyd never mentioned this man, which meant he wanted me to find him. And I would. I would find him. Because somewhere, behind all this betrayal and performance, was the truth. And I wasn't done yet. The day I called James Mitchell, I didn't expect anyone to answer. Private lawyers don't advertise on billboards. They don't return cold calls from grieving widows. But the card I found in Floyd's desk didn't feel like an afterthought. It felt planted, deliberate. A breadcrumb from a man who had spent the last months of his life preparing for something he never had time to explain. The phone rang once, twice. Then, Mitchell. A man's voice. Crisp, older, alert. I hesitated. Mr. Mitchell, my name is Marcia Langston. I believe you may have worked with my husband before he passed. Floyd Langston. A pause. Mrs. Langston, he said carefully. I was wondering when you'd call. I sat back, heart suddenly pounding. You knew he passed? Yes, he said. I read the notice. I was expecting you to reach out sooner, but I understand. My throat tightened. I didn't know you existed until last night. Another pause. That makes sense. What were you to Floyd? I asked. He never told me. I'm not your husband's estate lawyer. Let's start there. I was retained privately by him outside the family attorney. To do what? He hesitated, then spoke slowly. To safeguard certain final intentions, which he feared might be compromised by other parties. Other parties meaning my daughter. He didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. Mrs. Langston, he continued, I suggest we not discuss this over the phone. I can meet you, tomorrow if possible. My office is in Roseville. It's private, discreet. I agreed to meet him at noon, and then I sat in my kitchen for another full hour, staring at the empty space where the envelope of cash used to be. I had thrown it in the trash. And it was still there. I left the house later that day for the first time since the funeral. I didn't tell Vanessa. I didn't need her permission. I just needed my keys, my purse, and my silence. When I returned 3 hours later, something was wrong. The front door was locked, but not with the old key. My key didn't work. I jiggled it, pressed hard. Nothing. I rang the bell. No answer. I walked around to the back patio and tried the sliding door. Locked. It took me a full 10 minutes to realize what had happened. Vanessa had changed the locks. No notice, no phone call. Just changed them. As if I were a tenant overstaying my lease. I stood on the porch in the early evening light, heart pounding, until a neighbor passed by with her dog. She paused, confused. Marcia? You okay? I tried to smile. I think there's been a mistake. She looked at the locked door. Want me to call someone? I shook my head. No, thank you. I have noses. I walked away before I cried. Elaine opened her door before I even knocked. My old friend had been offering a spare room since Floyd's death. I had declined out of pride. But pride, it turns out, doesn't open locked doors. Oh, honey, she said, pulling me into a hug. Come in. You're shaking. I'm not staying long, I said, brushing past her into the warm, cluttered kitchen. Just one night. I've got a meeting tomorrow. A meeting? I nodded. With the man Floyd hired when he stopped trusting everyone else. Elaine didn't ask more. She poured me chamomile tea and set it down with the gentleness only women our age seem to remember. I held the cup like an anchor. That night, I lay in her guest bed and stared at the floral ceiling fan turning slowly above me. It was the same pattern she'd had since '94, comforting in a way the world no longer was. I thought about Vanessa. I thought about the summer she turned 16 and begged Floyd for her own car. He said no. I said yes. I sold a painting I had worked on for months and used the check for the down payment. She never thanked me. But that wasn't the point. She was my daughter. Her happiness had always been mine. And now? Now she was cutting me out like I was a rotted floorboard in a house she wanted to sell. The next morning, I dressed in navy slacks and a cream blouse, clean, pressed, understated. I needed to look like someone who was still standing. Mitchell's office was in a red brick building tucked behind a lawyer's plaza off Douglas Boulevard. No signs on the windows, just a discreet number and a buzzer. He opened the door himself. "Mrs. Langston," he said, offering a hand. "Come in." He was tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes, the kind of man who looked like he played chess for sport and won quietly. His office was tidy. No diplomas on the wall, just books, thick, leather-bound, and old. I sat across from him at a polished oak desk. "Why did my husband hire you?" I asked. He opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed envelope, and placed it in front of me. "This," he said, "is why." I didn't reach for it, not yet. "What's inside?" "A copy of a different will," he said, "dated later than the one currently in probate." My breath caught. "What?" "And a video message," he added, "from your husband." My hand trembled as I reached for the envelope. Mitchell stopped me. "Before you open that, you need to understand something. If what's in this envelope is real, and it is, then what your daughter has done may be legally reversible. But it won't be easy. It won't be quiet. And it won't be without pain." I looked him in the eyes. "She locked me out of my own house. I don't care how loud it gets." I left James Mitchell's office with the envelope tucked tightly into my handbag like it was made of gold. In many ways, it was. Proof, or at least a crack in the wall of lies Vanessa had built around me. I didn't open it in the car. I couldn't. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Instead, I drove to the one place I had never questioned my access: our bank. Bank of Sacramento, Carmichael Branch, just off Fair Oaks Boulevard. Floyd and I had opened our first joint account there in 1994, when we moved into the Granite Bay house. We had laughed back then, signing the papers in that little cubicle. He'd whispered, "Now I'm officially yours. You've got my money and my heart." I parked in the same lot, walked past the same fountain that had never worked properly, and stepped into the cool, air-conditioned lobby. The woman at the front desk looked young enough to be my granddaughter. She wore thick-framed glasses and a name tag that said, "Emily." I forced a smile. "Good morning. I need to speak with someone about my late husband's accounts." "Of course," she said kindly. "Do you have his name and date of passing?" I handed her my ID and Floyd's death certificate, which I had been carrying in my purse like a wound. After a moment, she nodded. "Let me take you to one of our associates." I was led to a small office where a man named Curtis sat behind a monitor, polite, corporate, and clearly uncomfortable with grief. "How can I assist you, Mrs. Langston?" "I need to review the activity on our joint accounts," I said. "I've been informed I may no longer have access, which is odd because we opened them together, and I've contributed equally for decades." He typed something into his system, squinted, and then frowned. He murmured. "It seems the primary on the account was changed 6 weeks ago." "What?" "According to this, Mr. Langston visited our main branch downtown with legal documentation. The account was transferred into a trust." "What kind of trust?" He hesitated. "I'm afraid I can't disclose the details without proper authorization." "I'm his widow," I said, voice rising. "I was his wife for 30 years. We built that business together. That money is part mine." "I'm very sorry," Curtis said, eyes darting. "But unless you're listed as a trustee or beneficiary, I can't show you anything further." My hands curled into fists on my lap. "So my daughter walks in with some paper and suddenly I'm erased?" Curtis cleared his throat. "According to the system, the trustee on the Langston Family Trust is Vanessa Langston." Of course it was. "Is there a sealed sub-account?" I asked, surprising even myself with the phrasing. "One that was flagged for private counsel?" His eyebrows lifted. "How did you, Yes. There's a sealed high-security sub-account. Am I authorized to access it?" He shook his head. "That account can only be accessed with dual authentication from a verified estate attorney and proof of an original passcode or security token. Can you see who opened it?" "I'm sorry. I can't give you that." I leaned forward. "Curtis, please, I am not asking you to violate policy. I am asking you one human being to another. Can you confirm if it was my husband who created that account?" He hesitated. Then, in a whisper, "Yes. It was created by Floyd Langston 6 months ago." "It's no way." "Thank you," I said quietly. That was all I needed to know. I stood up. My hands were cold, my head buzzed, As I turned to leave, Curtis said gently, "If something's wrong, I hope you find what you're looking for." Outside, the sun was too bright. The heat stung my face. I walked back to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and finally opened the envelope Mitchell had given me. Inside was a single flash drive and a printed document. The document was a copy of a will signed, dated, notarized, dated, just 4 weeks before Floyd's death. It was nothing like the version Morrison had read. In this one, I was the primary heir. I was given full rights to the Granite Bay house, half of the business shares, and explicit instructions regarding the family trust. Vanessa was included too, but as a co-beneficiary, not the sole heir. My hands were trembling as I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The screen flickered. Then Floyd appeared. His face was thinner, his eyes darker, but his voice was steady. "If you're watching this, Marcia, then something went wrong." He took a long breath. "I changed the will. I made it legal. But I know how persuasive Vanessa can be. And I know she's angry. She thinks the company is hers, but it's not. It's ours. Yours and mine." He leaned forward. "You held me up when I couldn't walk. You gave me everything. I never forgot that. And I won't let anyone erase you. This is my insurance, my final clause." The video ended. I sat there in stunned silence. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't irrelevant. Floyd had tried to protect me. And now, it was my turn to protect what was left of him. 2 days after I watched Floyd's final message, a knock came at Elaine's door just before sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone. Elaine was out at her Thursday quilting group, and I had just made myself a cup of peppermint tea, trying to calm the ache in my chest that never seemed to ease. I opened the door and froze. "Hi," said the woman on the porch. "You probably don't remember me. My name's Lillian. Lillian Rhodes." I blinked. "Floyd's old assistant?" She smiled, relieved. "Yes, from back when he ran Langston Tech out of the warehouse behind the mechanic shop, before the board, before the money. It's Lavdid." I stepped aside without thinking. "Come in." Lillian hadn't changed much. Her red curls were streaked with gray now, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 10 years ago. But her posture was the same. Straight, alert, loyal. "I saw you at the funeral," I said, motioning her toward the kitchen. "I was a bit overwhelmed." "Understandably," she hesitated. "That's why I didn't approach you. But I've been thinking about it ever since. About whether or not I should speak up." "Speak up about what?" She sat down at the table, eyes scanning the room as if checking for microphones. Then she leaned in. "I was with Floyd the day he changed his will," she said. "The one that leaves everything to you." My chest tightened. "You were?" "He asked me to witness it. We met at a notary's office, off Greenback Lane. Quiet, off the books. He brought a man with him, James Mitchell. I've met Mitchell." "Then you know he was serious." "Floyd said he didn't trust Morrison anymore. Said something about Vanessa getting too close, asking too many questions. He looked tired, but clear-headed. He told me, 'Lillian, if anything happens, make sure Marcia knows the truth.'" I sat back, swallowing hard. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "I didn't think it was my place. And I didn't know what had happened, until I heard from one of the girls at Langston Tech that Vanessa announced herself as the sole heir. No mention of you. Not even a tribute, just cold business." That sounded like Vanessa. Lillian reached into her purse and slid a folded paper across the table. I opened it carefully. A notarized statement, her signature, dated. "I made this the day Floyd died," she said, in case anything seemed off. I didn't want it to get lost. I looked at her, my eyes stinging. "You may have just saved everything." She smiled, soft. "He loved you, Marcia. That was clear. He just didn't know how to fight her anymore." "It was Wave now." I nodded slowly. "Then I'll fight for him." After Lillian left, I called James Mitchell. "She came forward," he said, surprised. "She did. She has the notary details, the witness signature, everything." He paused. "That's enough to contest the current will. But it won't be easy. Vanessa has the momentum, the public story, the board support. I don't care. Marcia, this will get ugly, public. She may attack your credibility, your sanity." End quote, a leviting in his profits to a visiples. I've been a mother long enough to handle being underestimated. He chuckled. That's a quote worth carving into stone. We agreed to meet the next morning to file the first motion of contestation. That night, as I lay in bed, the ache in my chest returned, but it was different now. Sharper, focused. Not just grief, not just betrayal, purpose. I got up and walked to the tiny guest desk in Elaine's spare room. I pulled out a yellow notepad and began writing. A timeline, date by date. The day Floyd mentioned the new attorney. The date on the fake will. The day Vanessa visited Morrison. The moment she changed the locks. The line items from the bank. I wrote it all down. Because this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a story. And I was going to tell it properly. The Langston Tech headquarters hadn't changed much since Floyd's funeral. The glass front still gleamed under the morning sun, the logo still floated in sleek silver above the entryway, and the receptionist still offered a hollow welcome as I stepped in, heels clicking on the marble floor. But the warmth was gone. I walked in alone, unannounced. Vanessa had no idea I was coming. James Mitchell had warned me this wasn't the typical route. Going through legal channels is safer, he said, cleaner. But I wasn't here to play clean. I was here to make them look me in the eye. Excuse me, I told the receptionist. I need to speak to Vanessa Langston. The young man, barely older than a college student, froze. Do you have an appointment? No, I said. Tell her it's her mother. He blinked. I think she's in a meeting. She'll want to see me. The boy hesitated. Then he picked up the phone and dialed. I didn't wait. I walked past the glass security gate and toward the elevator. I had been coming to this building for over a decade. I knew the layout better than any new intern. The elevator opened onto the executive floor, where the silence was thicker, padded by plush carpet and heavier egos. Vanessa's office door was half open. She was seated at the end of a long glass conference table, surrounded by 6 board members. A sleek monitor displayed charts and numbers, projections for the next quarter. She saw me and her expression faltered, just for a moment. Then she stood. Mother, she said, smiling tightly. This is unexpected. One of the board members turned. Is this? Yes, she said. My mother, Marcia Langston. She was just leaving. No, I said, stepping inside. She's just arriving. I turned to the board. Gentlemen, ladies, I apologize for interrupting, but I believe I have a right to be heard. Mom, Vanessa hissed. This isn't the time. It wasn't the time when you shoved a will in my face 3 days after your father's funeral either, but that didn't stop you. The room went very still. I have a few questions, I said, pacing slowly. Perhaps you've been shown a will, the one that names my daughter as the sole heir of Floyd Langston's estate. A few board members nodded, uncertain. Unfortunately, I said, that will is being challenged, with legal documents, a dated video message, and a notarized witness. Vanessa's jaw tightened. This is not the place for legal theatrics. Then let's talk business, I said, keeping my eyes on the board. Because if you're placing your future in Vanessa's hands, you deserve to know the truth. Mom, Vanessa barked. Let her speak, one of the older men said softly. I stepped closer to the screen behind her, tapping the table for emphasis. Langston Tech was built on a partnership. Floyd had the vision, yes, but he also had debts, doubts. And every time he fell, I was the one who stood. I mortgaged our house, sold my studio, took over payroll when he had his stroke. I don't say this to gain sympathy. I say it because legacy matters. I looked at Vanessa. She walked into this company with polish and ambition, but she did not build it. She inherited it, and then tried to bury the part that didn't serve her narrative. It's not of the 16th of it. I have a fiduciary duty to protect this company, Vanessa said coolly, not entertain emotional performances. Then explain why the trust account was created without board oversight. She froze. The room shifted. Trust account? A woman asked. I pressed. Created 6 weeks before Floyd's death. By Vanessa. Funds reallocated, shares moved, without approval. Vanessa snapped. Those were personal family assets. Then why use company legal resources to move them? I countered. A younger board member pulled out a tablet. Is this true, Vanessa? None of this is relevant, she said, voice sharp. She's just bitter and grieving. I reached into my bag and pulled out Lillian's notarized statement. Then explain this. A signed witness confirmation. And the video Floyd left. Would you like me to play it for them now? Vanessa's hand slammed the table. Enough. The room went silent again. She looked around, realizing she had lost control of the narrative. One of the board members, a man named Gregor who'd been with the company since its 3rd year, folded his hands. Vanessa, perhaps it would be wise to adjourn, discuss this with counsel. She glared at me, eyes blazing. You don't win anything by embarrassing me. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. I'm not here to win, Vanessa. I'm here to restore what you stole. With that, I turned and walked out, my heart pounding like a drum. Back in the elevator, I finally exhaled. That had been reckless. Risky, but necessary, because silence was no longer my weapon. The truth was, I hadn't even made it to the car before the text came through. Meet me. 10 minutes. Loading dockside door. No name. But I didn't need one. Vanessa. The Langston Tech loading dock was tucked behind the building, hidden from view. No cameras, no security guards. Just a steel door marked service only, and a set of concrete steps stained by years of forgotten deliveries. She was waiting for me when I rounded the corner, arms crossed, back straight, her heels tapping nervously on the metal grate. You're enjoying this, she said the moment I got close. I stayed 3 feet away. You're confusing truth with revenge. Her jaw flexed. You humiliated me in front of the board. You tried to erase me in front of a lawyer. She exhaled sharply, looking past me for a moment. What do you want? I want the truth, I said. The real truth. Not just the paper trail. Not the forged signatures. I want to hear it from your mouth. She laughed bitterly. Fine. You want the truth? She stepped closer. Dad didn't trust me. He said I was too aggressive, too driven, that I needed to learn humility. He was going to split the company and hand you half. I said nothing. I built this version of Langston Tech, she snapped. I streamlined operations. I secured new investors. You sat in the corner and painted landscapes. I blinked. You mean the year I ran payroll while your father recovered from surgery? The year I worked nights so your college tuition didn't get delayed? That corner you're talking about was a home I held together while you turned it into a corporation. You never respected what I was trying to do, and you never respected what I had done. She looked away, jaw tight. Dad made me feel like a visitor in his empire. I saw it then. Not just anger, not cruelty, but resentment. Deep, old resentment. One that began long before Floyd ever wrote a will. You forged the update, I said softly. Her eyes snapped back to mine. You convinced Morrison, or pressured him. You took advantage of your father's illness. Vanessa didn't deny it. What was your plan? I asked. Let me live out my days in a small apartment while you played heiress to a company I helped build. She didn't answer. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is the bank code, the sealed trust account you mentioned. I know it exists. I don't know what's in it, but I'm guessing it's not in my favor. I didn't take it. Why give it to me? Because I want this over, she said. If you push this into court, the company suffers. The press will eat it up. Investors will flee. They don't want family drama in their tech portfolios. I folded my arms. So you want me to disappear again? Nicely, this time. She met my gaze. I'm offering to give you back the house. The shares. Publicly. Quietly. You get what you want, and I get to keep the board's confidence. And what about Floyd's name? His real will? We say he changed his mind again. Died before filing the paperwork. You forgive me. Publicly. I make a generous reconciliation statement. And I smile while you get away with this? She stepped closer, eyes locked on mine. You want to ruin me. I know that. But you also know how much worse this gets for all of us if you do. There it was. Not regret. Just calculus. Keep the paper, I said. I already have the code. Her eyes narrowed. I'm not here to barter. I'm here to finish what your father started. I turned and walked away, heart pounding with every step. Behind me, she didn't call out. She didn't beg. She didn't threaten. She just stood there, trapped by her own game. I didn't stop walking until I reached Elaine's car. My hands trembled on the wheel as I drove away, but not from fear. From clarity. Floyd had known this might happen, that Vanessa's ambition could twist into cruelty, that legacy could be corrupted. But he had trusted me with the truth. And now, I was holding it. James Mitchell's office was quiet when I arrived the next morning. Too quiet. No phones ringing, no assistants shuffling papers, no distant clack of legal boots on marble floors. Just the sound of a ceiling fan spinning overhead, its rhythm matching the pounding of my heart. James looked up from his desk, a cup of black coffee steaming beside him. "You saw her." I nodded. "She offered me the house and the shares." He leaned back slowly. "Let me guess. In exchange for silence. She wants the narrative to stay clean." He didn't respond. Just sipped his coffee like that was the most predictable news of the week. I told her no, I said. "I'm not here for scraps." James nodded. "Then we proceed." We'd already filed the motion to contest Floyd's will. But now, armed with Lillian's statement, the bank receipt, and the flash drive, we had what James called a full evidentiary outline. It was enough to push for a hearing. "She'll try to delay," he warned. "Motion to suppress the video, challenge the witness, discredit the notary. Let her." "You're sure?" I met his eyes. "Yes." "Then we take this to Judge Radcliffe." My brows rose. "Marjorie Radcliffe? She's still on the bench?" James nodded. "And she hates family drama. Known for moving fast and for calling liars out." I let out a small breath. Good. 2 days later, we were in court. It wasn't a grand courtroom. No ornate carvings or long oak benches, just a medium-sized hearing room with pale walls, a tired-looking bailiff, and a judge's desk flanked by state flags. It was intimate, too intimate. Vanessa sat across the room, surrounded by 2 lawyers. Morrison was there too, his eyes avoiding mine. I wore a navy suit and Floyd's wedding ring. James laid our case out calmly. No drama, just facts. The notarized will, the witness statement, the bank activity, the video. Judge Radcliffe, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp voice and gray hair pulled tight in a bun, leaned forward slightly as the flash drive played Floyd's message. She didn't blink. When it ended, she looked at Vanessa's lawyer. "Your response?" He stood. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge the video, we challenge the legality of the document. There's no official filing of this updated will. The notary has since retired. And while the witness appears credible, she is not a neutral party." "She's not a neutral party," Judge Radcliffe repeated. "You mean the woman who worked for Mr. Langston for 13 years without incident?" "Your Honor." She held up a hand. "Let me be clear. I'm not here to babysit a battle of egos. I am here to determine whether the current will reflect the genuine, uncoerced intent of the deceased." "Abrit." She turned to me. "Mrs. Langston, you've been very calm through all this. Why?" The room went silent. I stood slowly. "Because I've spent my entire life being told to be patient, to be polite, to wait my turn. I waited through years of debt, of stress, of holding a family together while my husband built his dream. I waited while my daughter grew ambitious. And I waited even after the funeral, hoping she'd realize what she did was wrong." I paused. "But I'm done waiting. Thanks for watching. Also this for coming from the watching." The judge nodded, then looked at Vanessa. "Miss Langston, do you deny forging your father's signature on the alternate will?" Vanessa's lawyer quickly stood. "We deny the validity of the alternate document. We do not admit to forgery." Radcliffe raised a brow. "That's not what I asked." Vanessa's jaw clenched. "I did what was best for the company, for his legacy, even if it meant rewriting his wishes?" Radcliffe pressed. Vanessa said nothing. Radcliffe sighed, leaning back. "I'll take this under advisement, but I suggest both parties prepare for a public trial." The gavel didn't fall, but the warning did. After the hearing, Vanessa stormed past me, heels cracking like gunfire on tile. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "No," I said. "I think it's just beginning." She didn't respond, just kept walking, her 2 lawyers scrambling after her like nervous shadows. Outside, James stood beside me on the courthouse steps. The sun was bright. My hands trembled. "You did well," he said. "She's going to fight harder now," I whispered. "And we're going to stand taller." I looked up at the courthouse. It wasn't majestic, but it held weight. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the weight wasn't only on my shoulders. Elaine opened the door before I could grab it myself. She'd seen me coming through the front window. "Well?" she asked, peering over her glasses like a school principal. I stepped inside and exhaled. The judge listened. Really listened. Elaine grinned. "About time someone did." I dropped my purse on the hallway bench and headed for the kitchen. She followed, her slippers making soft scuffs on the hardwood floor. As the kettle whistled, she asked, "You think you'll win?" I stared at the steam curling from the spout. I'm not invisible anymore. That's a start. The tea helped, but not much. I still felt hollow, like I'd poured too much of myself out in that courtroom. 30 years of pain and patience, all reduced to 20 minutes of testimony. Later that evening, Elaine had just gone to bed when the doorbell rang. It was after 9. I hesitated, then opened it. A man stood there, tall and stooped with age, holding a canvas bag. He looked familiar in the way a faded photograph does, like a part of the past you forgot you missed. "Mrs. Langston?" he asked. "Yes." He stepped forward slightly, lifting the bag. "I was your husband's accountant. Name's Roy Keller. I didn't know if I should come, but after seeing the hearing coverage, I figured you might need this." He handed me the bag. I opened it slowly. Inside were ledgers, tax forms, and a thick black binder labeled Langston Trust, Restricted Notes. My breath caught. I didn't know these still existed. He nodded. Floyd kept 2 sets, one for public filing, one for contingency. "Why bring this to me?" He scratched his head, looking ashamed. "Because I helped Vanessa. I didn't know the full story. She said Floyd was unstable near the end, that he wanted everything handled quickly. I trusted her. I shouldn't have." The pages inside were filled with notes in Floyd's handwriting, dates, meetings, questions about board readiness and unofficial inquiries. And then, toward the back circled in red ink, "In case of fraud, contact Mitchell immediately." Roy looked away. "I never called him." "You are now," I said softly. He nodded, eyes glassy. "I just wanted you to have this, to make it right." He left without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at Elaine's kitchen table, binder open, reading Floyd's meticulous records. There were entries about Vanessa's push to replace board members, about private conversations with Morrison that Floyd had found suspicious, about strange activity in the company's international accounts. Floyd had seen it coming. He hadn't just been cautious, he'd been preparing for war. And he hadn't told me, not because he didn't trust me, but because he didn't want me to worry. He had tried to shield me. I would not waste that shield. The next morning I took the binder to James. He opened it like it was a sacred text. "These are damning," he said. "If these entries hold up, we can file for criminal misrepresentation, maybe even elder financial abuse." "She'll spin it," I said. "Call him confused, say he was writing nonsense. Then we prove otherwise," he said. "With dates, with signatures, with paper." I tapped the page with Floyd's red circle. "Let's make that call," I said. By the end of the day, James had subpoenaed Morrison's records. Vanessa's legal team filed for delay within the hour, but the court didn't grant it. Judge Radcliffe wasn't in the mood. The next hearing was set for Monday. 3 days. 3 days to prepare for the moment I'd be forced to prove my husband's love in front of strangers. 3 days to pull 30 years of quiet sacrifice into focus. 3 days before the world saw what a daughter's ambition could cost. The courthouse was colder than usual, the kind of sterile chill that didn't come from the thermostat, but from what people carried inside: secrets, shame, regrets wrapped in pinstriped suits. I sat behind James at the front table, hands clasped so tightly they turned white. Across the aisle, Vanessa was flawless as always, tailored suit, perfect hair, practiced confidence, but her eyes darted more than before. Her jaw tightened each time the door creaked. She was expecting Morrison. So was I. He arrived 10 minutes late, eyes sunken, shoulders hunched, a shell of the man who once swaggered through our home as Floyd's most trusted advisor. The bailiff called the hearing to order. Judge Radcliffe wasted no time. "We are here to examine the validity of the contested will and consider allegations of professional misconduct," she said, tone as flat as a gavel. "Mr. Morrison, you are under oath. You may take the stand." He did. Slowly, James approached, calm as ever. Mr. Morrison, can you confirm your role in drafting the will currently in probate? Yes, Morrison muttered. Was it executed in the presence of Mr. Langston and two neutral witnesses? Silence. Morrison shifted in his seat. No, he finally said. There were no witnesses. Not then. Vanessa stiffened. Did Mr. Langston instruct you to change the beneficiaries, removing his wife entirely? Another pause. He said he was considering changes, Morrison said, but he didn't approve a final version. James leaned in. So you acted without full authorization? Morrison's voice cracked. Vanessa said it was urgent. She said Floyd couldn't handle the stress. She showed me a draft with his signature. I didn't verify it. You filed a forged will? I didn't know it was forged, he snapped. Judge Radcliffe raised an eyebrow. Morrison sank in his seat, shame crawling up his neck. She pressured me, said the company would collapse, said her mother was emotionally unstable. I was scared I'd lose my firm. So you chose to erase a woman's entire legacy for the sake of convenience. Morrison looked at me. Just for a moment, I made a mistake. Judge Radcliffe leaned forward. A mistake, Mr. Morrison, is misplacing a file, not helping falsify the last wishes of a dying man. Vanessa stood. Your Honor, if I may. No, Radcliffe cut in. You may not. You will have your turn. James continued. Mr. Morrison, are you prepared to submit a signed affidavit confirming the will currently in probate is invalid and that you acted under pressure? Yes, Morrison whispered. My breath caught. So did Vanessa's. James turned to the judge. Your Honor, based on this testimony, we ask for an immediate stay of probate proceedings and recognition of the alternate will. Radcliffe looked at Morrison. Leave the courtroom. You'll be contacted regarding disbarment procedures. He didn't argue. He just walked out. The door clicked behind him like the end of a chapter. Vanessa's team fumbled. Their objections were weak, unprepared. She hadn't planned for betrayal. The judge stood. This court recognizes substantial evidence of fraud in the administration of Mr. Langston's estate. Until further review, Mrs. Marcia Langston shall be granted provisional access to all Langston Trust holdings and property under question. My ears rang. I heard the words, but I couldn't feel them. I had won. At least, part of it. Outside, cameras had begun to gather. News had leaked. Tech heiress accused of inheritance fraud. Vanessa brushed past me without a word. But for the first time, I didn't follow her. I didn't plead. I didn't chase. Elaine met me on the courthouse steps with a blanket and a thermos of tea. She wrapped both around me before I could even speak. You look tired, she said. I am, I replied. But stronger. I nodded slowly. Because I was. I hadn't just defended my place in Floyd's story. I had reclaimed my own. The house on Magnolia Lane was never just a house. It was the place where I watched Vanessa take her first steps on the oak floors, Floyd refinished by hand. Where I sang to Floyd on our 10th anniversary, barefoot in the kitchen, a candle stuck in a slice of apple pie because I'd burned the cake. Where the upstairs window still held a faded sticker from Vanessa's middle school science project, Women Belong in Labs. Coming home was never supposed to feel like this. The locksmith handed me the new keys with a polite nod, then packed up his tools and left without fuss. It was just me and Elaine now, standing on the porch of the house I had been locked out of 3 weeks ago. The door opened with a click. No resistance. No drama. I stepped inside. It smelled like lavender and lemon wood polish. Vanessa had hired cleaners, it seemed. The house was spotless, sterile. Elaine stepped in behind me, whistling low. It looks like a catalog. Actor about. No warmth, I murmured. No mess, no life. We walked room to room. The furniture was in its place, but the soul of the house felt absent. All the family photos were gone. No portraits, no graduation frames, no wedding pictures. Only one frame remained in the den, above the fireplace. A photo of Floyd and Vanessa, shaking hands at a company gala. I took it down gently. In the guest bedroom, I found all my old clothes boxed up, labeled donation. Elaine frowned. She packed you away. I have crossed event. I stared at the label. Like clutter. My studio upstairs had been turned into a lounge minimalist. Glass desk, a leather recliner, no paints, no brushes. The light that used to pour in through the skylight was now filtered by blackout shades. She erased me, I whispered. Elaine rested a hand on my shoulder. But you're back, so unerase. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by silence. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just made a list. Things to restore. Family photos. My studio bed. Floyd's garden bench. Vanessa's sticker on the window, maybe. The plaque Floyd gave me. CEO of our home. That night, I slept in my own bed. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the house breathe. In the morning, I opened the sealed trust account. James had helped push the final paperwork through now that the court had granted me provisional access. Inside was more than money. There were letters. To me, to Vanessa, to a child we never had. Floyd's idea of legacy. His handwriting was shaky but clear. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I tried to do right, but money makes people forget who they are. You didn't. Thank you for holding the line. I folded the letter with trembling fingers. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Elaine had gone home, and I hadn't spoken to Vanessa since the court ruling. I opened the door, and there she was. Alone. Her makeup was gone. Her posture no longer weaponized. She held a folder in one hand and a bag in the other. I came to return some things, she said quietly. I said nothing. She walked past me, set the bag on the kitchen counter, and pulled out my jewelry box, a stack of family photos, and the CEO of our home plaque. I stared. She opened the folder and slid it toward me. Legal documents. Transfer of full rights to the Granite Bay House. Restoration of my name to all Langston Tech co-founder credits. Her voice cracked. I didn't lose the company. I lost the only person who ever believed I was more than a business plan. I stayed silent. I hated how close you and Dad were, she continued. I thought he loved you more. Maybe he did. I don't know. But I tried to take what he gave you and make it mine. She looked at me. Really looked. I was wrong. I could have said 1,000 things. Instead, I reached into the drawer and took out a faded sticker, the one from her science project. I handed it to her. She stared, and she cried. Not performative, not manipulative, just a daughter breaking under the weight of everything she'd tried to control. I don't know if we'll ever be okay, I said. She nodded. But I'm still your mother, and you're still my girl. That night, after she left, I replaced the photos, put the plaque back above the stove, reopened my studio, and painted for the first time in 5 years. Because home wasn't just a place. It was a truth you had to fight for. The paintbrush felt unfamiliar in my hand at first, like greeting an old friend after years of silence. The bristles were stiff, the palette dry, but as the sun filtered through the open skylight, I let my hand move, not with confidence but with instinct. I didn't try to paint something grand. Not a landscape, not a portrait, just a small, still life. A bowl, an apple, a folded linen napkin. I hadn't realized how much I missed the quiet hum of creation. Not just the act of painting, but the being that came with it. That slow, patient rhythm of seeing the world as color, shape, and shadow. It was like breathing again after being underwater too long. Elaine came over later that afternoon, holding a tray of banana muffins. Well, she said, peeking into the studio, look at you, Georgia O'Keeffe. I laughed. Hardly. It's an apple. It's a damn fine apple. End quote. We had tea on the porch, watching the wind move through the magnolia tree that Floyd had planted our second spring in the house. Elaine glanced at me. So, what now? That question had haunted me. What now? I had the house, the rights, the name, the legacy Floyd intended. But there was more to reclaim. I called James later that evening. I want to start a foundation, I told him. A foundation? For women, older women, who were erased, discarded, who still have things to build, to say, to start over. He was quiet. Then, what will you call it? I didn't hesitate. The second brushstroke. That weekend, Vanessa called. She didn't ask to visit, just asked if I had time to talk. We met at a park halfway between our homes. She wore jeans, no makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail like when she was in high school. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. Good, I replied, because you don't need to ask for it. It's not a cover and the men did. She blinked, confused. Forgiveness is already in the paint, I said. In the letters. In the breath I take when I don't let hate grow where love used to be, Vanessa exhaled. I've been talking to HR. We're adding a new policy at Langston. Mandatory review of legacy documents. Transparency in family business succession. And we're offering counseling services. I figured it's the least I could do. I nodded slowly. There's one more thing, she added, opening her purse. She pulled out a photo. A printed, grainy image of me and Floyd in the garden, laughing, dirt on our faces. I kept this, she said. I don't know why. Because part of you remembered. She handed it to me. And this time, when I touched her hand, she didn't pull away. I went home and placed the photo in a new frame, hung it above the mantel. Beside it, I hung one of my new paintings, the apple, bowl, and napkin. Simple, balanced, whole. That night, I wrote the mission statement for the second brushstroke. For every woman who waited her turn. For every woman who built the foundation but was never given credit. For every woman told her time had passed. It hasn't. Not yet. 6 weeks later, the second brushstroke hosted its first community exhibit. Elaine and I arrived early at the Midtown Cultural Center, a converted firehouse with exposed brick and high ceilings that smelled faintly of sawdust and old stories. I had volunteered to curate the opening showcase 12 pieces by women over 50, all of whom had once abandoned their creative dreams for family, work, survival. We called it Unfinished, Undone, Unbroken. I walked the gallery space before the guests arrived, adjusting small things, a tilted frame, a lighting angle, a smudge on the glass. My own piece was tucked modestly in the corner. The apple painting, not the centerpiece, but a whisper, a beginning. One woman, Jeanette, had sculpted a series of small birds out of recycled metal. Each had a tag with the age she'd been when she stopped creating. One said 32, another 47, another simply, too late. That one made my throat tighten. Elaine came up behind me, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. They're arriving, she said. And they were. Men and women, young and old. Neighbors, co-workers, strangers. Some came curious, some came with sympathy. Some came with pain behind their eyes, searching the walls for a piece of themselves. Vanessa came too, not with fanfare, not in front but quietly. She stood at the back, holding a glass of seltzer, studying a painting of a woman's hands, kneading dough, flour trailing like memory. I approached her slowly. I didn't think you'd come, I said. I didn't think I should, she admitted. But then I realized, maybe I wasn't coming for you. Maybe I was coming for me. They standed. We stood in silence for a moment. Then she nodded toward a piece called The Chair Left Empty. It was simple. A painting of a dining room table, one chair pulled out, a plate still warm. She told me it was about her mother, Vanessa said, a woman who never got to sit and rest. I turned to her. Do you see it now? She met my eyes. Every day. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's not an apology shouted across a courtroom. It's a nod in a gallery, a shared memory in the shape of art. Later, James arrived, carrying a wrapped package. He found me near the refreshment table and handed it over with a smile. I figured you deserved something back, he said. I opened it slowly. Inside was a framed copy of Floyd's first business plan. The original, typed on a typewriter, smudged in places, my handwriting in the margins. I touched the frame, heart swelling. He always said you were the silent partner, James said, but I think you were the architect. I didn't speak. I just let the tears come. That night, after the last guest had gone, I walked the gallery alone. The lights dimmed, the quiet settled, and I stood before my painting, simple, still, small. I reached into my bag, pulled out a pen, and signed my name in the corner. Not with my initials, not with Mrs. Langston, but simply Marcia, because that was enough. The interview request came from a local radio station, Voices of Second Chances, a weekly program highlighting life's unexpected turns. At first, I hesitated. I'd spent a lifetime supporting from the shadows, never at the front of a microphone. But Elaine nudged me. Speak, she said. There's a woman out there who needs to hear your voice to find hers. So I said yes. The studio was tucked into the back of a community library, small and warm with thick carpeting and shelves filled with worn books. The host, Deborah Lynn, was a silver-haired woman with a laugh like velvet and eyes that missed nothing. "You ready?" she asked, adjusting her headphones. "As I'll ever be," I smiled. She hit record. "Today we're joined by Marcia Langston," Deborah began, co-founder of Langston Tech, recent victor in a high-profile inheritance case, and now founder of The Second Brushstroke, a nonprofit empowering women over 45 to reclaim their creative voices. "Marcia, welcome." "Thank you, Deborah. I'm honored." She asked about the exhibit, the foundation, the response. Then, gently, she shifted. "But tell me, Marcia, what does this moment mean for you?" I paused, then said, "For years, I was introduced as Floyd Langston's wife, or Vanessa Langston's mother, titles I wore with pride, but somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen as Marcia. I became a function, a footnote. This foundation, this fight, it wasn't just about justice, it was about memory. Mine." Deborah smiled softly. "What would you tell the woman listening who thinks her story is over?" I looked into the recording glass as if someone were truly on the other side. I'd tell her this: time didn't forget you. It's just been waiting for you to remember yourself. It's never too late to pick up the brush. When the episode aired, the station was flooded with letters and calls women who hadn't painted in decades, who'd let their sewing machines gather dust, who'd stopped writing poems when the babies came. Elaine brought me a box of the letters, and we read them over tea. One stood out. It was written in pencil, in looping cursive. "I cried in my car today. Not from sadness, from recognition. Thank you for reminding me I still have a story to finish. Lorraine, age 68. Vanessa started coming by on Sundays. At first, we didn't talk about the company. We talked about her high school friend who just got remarried, about the dog she wanted to adopt, about a recipe I used to make for Floyd, the cinnamon bread that always stuck to the pan. One day, she brought over a notebook. "I've been writing," she said, a little shy. "Nothing big. Just things I remember. About Dad. About us." She paused. "Would you read it sometime?" "I'd love to." She smiled. It was small. But it was real. The foundation began receiving grants. Local businesses offered art supplies. Retired teachers volunteered to mentor. The gallery now had monthly exhibits, each one curated by a different woman who once believed her best years were behind her. We were proving otherwise. And through it all, I kept painting. Not for galleries, not for applause, but because it was how I remembered who I was, who I'd always been beneath the mother, the wife, the witness, the survivor. One afternoon, as the autumn leaves rustled outside my studio window, I stood before a new canvas. This one was larger, a landscape. It showed a winding path, surrounded by trees, with a woman walking away from the viewer, her back straight, a satchel slung over her shoulder. The path didn't end. It curved out of sight. I called it "Still Walking," end quote, because I was. The invitation came in a thick ivory envelope, hand-delivered by courier. Elaine found it first, set it beside my tea, and raised an eyebrow. "You've gone from courtroom to calligraphy," she teased. I opened it carefully. Inside was a formal letter on Langston Tech stationery, but not the cold corporate kind. This one was embossed with soft script and signed with real ink. Vanessa's signature. "You are invited to Langston Tech's 25th anniversary gala. In recognition of our founders past, present, and forgotten no longer." My name was printed just below Floyd's. No Mrs., no +1, just Marcia Langston, co-founder. For a moment, I just stared. Then I closed my eyes and let the weight of it settle. The gala was held in the company's new innovation wing, a glass-paneled space that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. There were lights, cameras, laughter. Waiters passed sparkling cider on trays. And just inside the main entrance, a large photo exhibit chronicled the company's history. Floyd in his garage, hunched over a prototype. Vanessa at her first investor pitch. And in the center, a black and white photo of me and Floyd at a folding card table, surrounded by ledgers, coffee mugs, and our first employee badge printer. Below it, a plaque read, "The Heart Behind the Code." I stood there for a long time. Vanessa found me eventually. She was dressed in a deep blue gown, no longer trying to outshine the event but to belong to it. "I thought it was time they saw the real story," she said softly. I looked around. Engineers, executives, and board members I hadn't seen in years stopped to read the plaque, some even taking photos. "You did this," I said. "We did," she replied. "Together, eventually." She handed me a slim folder. "Also, I'd like you to consider rejoining the board." I blinked. "You're serious?" "You still have a stake. The seats are yours by right now. And we could use a perspective that isn't about market trends and quarterly projections. You know, a voice that remembers the why." "I know." I didn't answer right away. The thought of stepping into a boardroom again brought both curiosity and caution. But more than that, it stirred something else. Pride. That night, I met 3 women at the gala who had attended our foundation's art therapy pilot. One, a 59-year-old former nurse, had just sold her first painting at a community fair. Another was opening a co-op studio in her neighborhood. The third hugged me tightly and whispered, "You gave me back my story." "Is learnike." I held her hands and replied, "No, sweetheart, you just remembered where you left it." Back at home, I placed the gala program beside the invitation, and I looked at myself in the mirror. Not the age lines, not the silver in my hair, but the posture. The woman standing there was not waiting for a seat at the table. She was building new ones. The first board meeting I attended was nothing like I remembered. The room had changed. The table was no longer the polished mahogany Floyd and I had picked out years ago. Now it was glass and metal, sleek and modern, surrounded by ergonomic chairs and 2 walls of digital screens. But the energy? That was familiar. Crisp, cautious, curated. I took my seat at the far left, beside an eager young CTO who looked barely 30 and introduced himself twice like I hadn't heard the first time. Vanessa sat at the head, commanding the room not with dominance but with quiet certainty. It wasn't the daughter I had known growing up. It was the woman she'd fought to become. She opened the meeting with a short statement. "As many of you know," she began, "we're expanding into new educational initiatives. But to do it right, we need to remember where we came from." She turned slightly toward me. "I'd like to reintroduce you to my mother, Marcia Langston, the original co-founder of this company, and the reason I ever thought it was possible to build anything at all. I was no carroted." The room went still. Not awkward, not dismissive, just still with surprise. And then, slowly, respect. I nodded once. "Thank you, Vanessa." When it was my turn to speak, I stood. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted them to see me. "All of you," I said, "were chosen because you're brilliant, strategic, forward-thinking. But sometimes, in looking forward, we forget the people who paved the way." I paused, then gestured to the wall of photos behind me, the company timeline. When Floyd and I started Langston Tech, it wasn't about market share or IPOs. It was about building something that helped people live better, easier, more connected lives. I hope you'll carry that purpose forward, not because it's profitable, but because it's right. They listened. I saw it in their eyes. After the meeting, a quiet rush of new introductions came my way. People shook my hand. Some asked questions. A few even thanked me. It was surreal. That evening, I sat in Floyd's old office untouched since the last renovation, though now part of the legacy wing. A plaque outside bore his name. Inside, his favorite globe still sat in the corner, along with his first set of business books, dog-eared and faded. I found a drawer he'd always kept locked. Vanessa had the key. Inside, sketches of early prototypes, handwritten memos, letters to employees he'd written and never sent, encouraging words, apologies, reflections, and one letter to me, dated 5 months before his death. "Marcia, if you're reading this, it means I didn't fix it in time. Maybe I got tired. Maybe I trusted too long. But I know you. You'll fix it. You'll fight not with fists, but with truth. This company always had 2 minds behind it, one that built the code, and one that built the reason. Come back, if you can. They'll need your voice. Love always. F." I cried, silently, pressing the paper to my chest. Then I folded it, placed it in my bag, and walked back to the elevator. Outside, Vanessa waited by the lobby's glass fountain. She looked up. "Saw the office?" I nodded. "He left a message." She didn't ask what it said. She didn't need to. Instead, she offered me a small box. I opened it. Inside was a custom nameplate. Marcia Langston, Founder Emerita. She said softly, "I had it made months ago. I just didn't know if you'd ever want it." I held it like it was gold. Because to me, it was not the name, not the title, but the recognition, the restoration, the truth finally made visible. It started with a call from Lorraine, the woman who had sent me that first letter after the radio interview. She was in town for a family reunion and wanted to stop by the gallery. We met at the second brushstroke's main space, where sunlight poured through tall windows and the smell of linseed oil lingered between canvases. She walked with a cane now, but moved like someone who didn't believe in stopping for long. "I wanted to show you something," she said, holding up a flat portfolio. "Been working on it for months. Couldn't have done it without that first push from you." Inside was a charcoal sketch, rough, powerful, deeply human. A woman seated at a dining table, empty plates around her, hands clasped in her lap, not in prayer but in patience, in waiting. "I called it inheritance," she said softly. "It's not about money. It's about legacy." Tears welled up in my eyes, not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because it told my story, and so many others. I invited her to hang it in the next exhibit. That night, I returned home to find Vanessa in the garden, pruning back Floyd's roses. "He always said they were temperamental," she muttered. "Turns out they just need room." I sat beside her. "I think I'm ready to forgive you," I said. She froze. "You don't have to. Arna get it." "I know," I replied. "But I want to." She looked up. Her eyes shimmered with something between guilt and relief. "I never understood how lonely power could be until I had it," she whispered. I reached over, brushing a petal from her sleeve. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore." We sat in silence, the air thick with history and possibility. Later, in my studio, I began a new painting. Not a still life, not a landscape. A portrait. Of me, not young, not retouched, not posing. Just sitting at my own table, hands folded in calm, eyes steady and clear. It wasn't vanity. It was testimony. Proof that I had survived, reclaimed, forgiven. That I had lived fully. The next morning, I found a small envelope on the porch. Inside was a card, handwritten by Elaine. "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you light in others before you go." I smiled. Because I knew what I had built. Not just a company. Not just a gallery, but a path for others to find themselves when the world had told them their turn was over. The morning of the Foundation's second anniversary exhibit arrived with the scent of rain and lilacs. A soft spring storm had passed through overnight, washing the sidewalks clean, leaving everything smelling like beginnings. The exhibit was called Hands That Remember. Each piece had been created by a woman over 55. The youngest was 56. The oldest, Clarissa, a retired schoolteacher, was 89 and had sculpted a pair of hands holding a broken clock. "I never had time before," she told the crowd. "Now I sculpt it." The gallery was full. Laughter, camera flashes, the hum of community filled the air. I stood quietly by the back wall, watching it unfold. This was no longer my space alone. It had become something larger. A movement, a haven, a home. Vanessa approached me, her arm looped through that of a young intern. "Marcia," she said deliberately, not saying mom in public, honoring our balance. "There's someone I want you to meet." The girl looked about 20, nervous, with paint stains under her fingernails. "This is Jolie," Vanessa continued. "She's our new foundation fellow, first in her family to go to college, and she paints like she's pulling light from the air." I smiled and extended my hand. "Jolie, welcome." She took it carefully. "I read your story," she said. "You make me feel like I don't have to wait until I've lost everything to start something." My heart fluttered at her words. Because that was it, wasn't it? The legacy. Not in galleries or awards, but in reminders. That it's never too late. That your voice matters. That your story counts. I handed Jolie a set of old brushes, wrapped in linen. "These were mine," I said. "The first ones I bought when I decided to come back to painting. I think they're ready for new hands." "It's my Terriers and Downber." She clutched them to her chest, stunned. "Are you sure?" "Completely." That night, I returned home alone, lit a single candle. pulled out a blank canvas, and instead of painting, I wrote a letter to no one and to everyone. If you're reading this, you're not too late. Your voice is not too soft. Your hands are not too old. Begin again. Begin always. I left it unsigned because the signature didn't matter. The light had already been passed, and my work was complete. The story of Marsha Langston teaches us that it's never too late to reclaim your voice, your dignity, or your legacy. In a world that often sidelines older women, Marsha's journey is a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in revenge, but in resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. Her story inspires us to believe that no matter how long we've been silenced, we are always worthy of being heard and of creating something lasting.